All right. Well, welcome to episode 1 of An Engineer Chats. I'm Matthew, the engineer, and I'm chatting with my buddy Eric today
Hi.
about logical versus real hard drive space.
Oh boy.
Admittedly, an idea given to me by Eric himself because he was building a computer, and anyone who's built a computer and actually has installed hard drives, especially with Windows, knows that you buy a 1 terabyte hard drive, and then when you install it, it's about 940 gigabytes. What
Let
was your
me
experience, Eric?
um let me go and actually check, but you're just about right. Uh so I actually have a 2 terabyte hard drive for just for everything that's not important. The doesn't matter what's on there, but instead of 2 terabytes when I go and look in the properties thing, it's like, yeah, this is only 1.81 terabytes. And I remember distinctly when I was talking with Matthew when I was going through and making sure everything worked, I looked and I'm like, wait a minute. They jibbed me out of like zero point 0.2 terabytes.
I'll
And
spoil it for you. They didn't. Ba,
yeah,
ba, ba.
yeah. Then I suggested this to him and I guess I guess you filed it away and I never actually expected to see it happen, but here we are.
Here it is, episode 1. No, no doubt. Okay, so basically, if you've built a computer, you know what a hard drive is, right? It's where you store your pictures, your applications, all of the data that's actually in your computer. And if you're using Windows specifically, sometimes your hard drive space will be seen differently, right? So the standard is you install a 1 terabyte hard drive and you get about, 941 gigabytes out the other end, right? This doesn't really have to do with you being lied to by the hard drive company, but we'll get into it. So, here's the 1 terabyte example, right? 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, right?
Hmm.
That's the way the math works. All of those pretty prefixes, which is 1 million megabytes or 1 trillion kilobytes, right? Which
It's
is
a lot
just
of bytes.
it is a lot of bytes, and if we're gonna expand that out, that's 100,000 million billion. That's 1 trillion bytes. So, yeah, it's a lot of data. But basically, there's a difference between kibibytes and kilobytes. So,
Kibby bytes.
yeah, kibibytes, and along with those are gibibytes and
I'm gonna be
tebibytes.
honest. The, all that sounds like different brands of pet food.
I mean, you're not far off, really, right?
So what are those things? You kind of just mentioned them.
Yeah. See, because the thing is, that's the big difference, right? Gigabytes is 1,000 megabytes, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if you're using gigabytes, okay, so the easy way to do it, 1,000 kilobytes per gigabyte, right? But if you're
Uh-huh.
using a gigabyte, it's 1024 kibibytes.
So it's a different unit of measurement?
Yeah. So basically, like Windows itself uses kibibytes, right? And the hard drive manufacturers use the more accepted kilobytes system, right? So basically, kibibytes and kilobytes has to do with whether a gigabyte is 10 to the 3 megabytes, or whether it's basically it's the difference between 1,000 and 1024, because really in computers you're not dealing with units of 10, you're dealing with units of 2 because it's
Yeah.
binary. So that's really the biggest difference, right? So in all honesty, Windows is just doing it wrong. Literally, if you install the same hard drive into a Linux system, it will tell you correctly, and it will tell you it'll tell you whether it's in kilobytes or kibibytes, right? The issue is Windows uses kibibytes but tells you it's kilobytes. So that's why they're saying you're not getting as much memory as you are. There's no jipping of memory. The hard drive people are selling you the right amount of memory, but the actual operating system of Windows basically goes, nah, bro, it's really cute that you think that it is, but we're just going to count it by something else, but claim we're counting it the other way.
So you don't actually end up losing space, correct? It's just sort of like it's displayed differently.
Yep, effectively that's it, right? It's just a different way to understand how something works. Like you're just partitioning the data different ways, right? Like it's like if you have 10 marbles and you set it into two groups of 5 or 5 groups of 2. It's the same amount of, marbles, but it's basically claimed differently, right? So like
It's counted in different units. So like, you have, I don't know, you have two things of A and five versus five things of B, something like that.
yeah, basically. Like it just they're just telling it to you differently. It's like if you were told you were getting a box set of DVDs. Like to one company the box set could be 6 DVDs of like one series, but if you get a different box set it could be 4 DVDs, right?
Yeah.
Basically, there's just different amounts of data in either a kilobyte or a kibibyte, which is a kilobyte is 1,000 if you follow the like kilo meaning 10 to the third, and kibi meaning I believe 2 to the 10.
Okay. So if I were to install if I were to install a magical program that was exactly 2,000 gigabytes, would it fit on my hard drive in Windows, even though it only says it can hold like 1.8 whatever terabytes?
I do believe so because well you'd need of course there's certain amounts of space that the OS basically takes and says we're using this to make sure that we're keeping tabs on everything in the hard drive, right?
Yeah, we'll just say that's on a different drive on an SSD.
Yeah, exactly, right? So if you're saying that can you fill it up all the way with the amount that is said? Yes. If you wanted to fill it up with 2000 kibibytes, like 2000 gibibytes, which by the way, I love these names. Are they not fun?
I told you they sound like pet food.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm going to go and get my dog a bag of kibibytes. Either way. Yeah, it's you could not fit 2000 gigabytes on, but you could put 2000 gigabytes on.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a difference in units, which is funny because it's not something that anybody really cares about that much, right? Like it's not something that matters a whole lot. It's just something that happens and no one really thinks twice about it. But if you were to install it on a Linux machine, you can even tell Linux, hey, how much space is in this? And it'll say this many kibibytes. And then I'm pretty sure there's a way you can ask it and say how many, like, kilobytes or, like, gigabytes. And it'll actually tell you that value, which is interesting. Yeah, basically it's Windows hiding stuff away and not really telling you that it's doing something different.
Interesting.
Though there is another reason why you may get, like, less space on a hard drive than you think you're getting, right?
Because there's a ghost in the machine? My computer's haunted?
Yeah, no, it usually the ghosts the manufacturers actually take into effect the amount of ghosts that on average will be in your hard drive, and they actually set aside a little set of chips that are specifically for ghost storage.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, beyond the
So-
ghosts, right? 'Cause
What's the real reason?
it has to do with an operating system, right? So operating systems, to keep tabs on what's going on in the rest of your computer, will create little files here and there that basically keep track of that, and they'll hide those files away from you, right? Like you can look at those files by in Linux they don't really hide them, but in Windows you can basically there's a setting you can say that says show hidden files, and you can see these files that mean nothing to you and I, right? But the operating system reads them and knows what they mean. So they basically keep like states of applications, right? So like every once in a while Windows will save a little like let's say you're using Microsoft Word, right? It'll save a little flag every once in a while of where you are in your program, which is why if your computer suddenly crashes and you turn it back on, it'll reopen the program and go back to where you left. right? That's an
Hmm.
operating system thing. It basically tells the operating system, hey, come here. Make sure you know what's going on just in case something goes wrong, right? And there's other stuff too, right? Like there's Windows makes a file called swapfile.sys, right? And obviously it's a system file based on the sys extension, right?
Hmm.
But basically this helps Windows multitask, right? So Eric, what do you know about the difference between your actual RAM and your hard drive?
Hard drive space is more like solid. I'm gonna I'm gonna go a whole nother dimension here. I'm gonna compare it to stuff I half remember from psychology.
Oh no.
Uh, Hard drive space is like crystallized memory, I think it's called, where it's basically stuff that's permanent, whereas random access memory is like it's like I think they call it liquid memory or something,
Or
where it's basically
plastic or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's more like day-to-day stuff. Like hard drive space is you remember your birthday because it's been ingrained in your head, whereas like RAM is you remembering that you need to take out the garbage tomorrow or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually like that's pretty good, right? So basically RAM is called memory because it allows the operating system and your computer to load bits and pieces of applications, right? That's why having more RAM allows you to multitask better and usually makes your computer faster, right?
Okay.
Because you don't need all of an application you're running at once, right? So think about if you are editing a photo in like a photo editor and you're zoomed in on one portion, most of the time your operating system will forget the rest of that while other applications run in the background. And then when you zoom back out, it has to either grab bits and pieces from your RAM, which is like your working memory, and it'll also grab what it doesn't have from your hard drive, which is like static. Once you have something on there, it shouldn't, unless act of God, right? It shouldn't disappear, right? It's non volatile, is the phrase.
Hmm.
So RAM is, it's working memory. So that, how I talked to you about that swap file.sys?
Yep.
Basically, that is what happens when you run out of RAM on your machine. Windows will basically say, okay, we don't have anything in here we want to forget yet, so we're just going to take it and write it actually back down to like your hard drive, right? So it's actually taking bits and pieces of applications that you're running and it's rewriting them to disk so that even though it doesn't have the RAM space for it, it still has an area it knows to go to where there's only bits and pieces of applications.
Okay.
So, and it makes sense that Windows would want to hide that from you, right? And Linux has the same kind of file system where you can create a file like that too, but it's you're not meant to access it. It's just something that you're supposed to leave because your operating system is basically big brothering you and making sure you don't mess up your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another reason why. Um, so like, what's up?
It's just another reason why be space is gone that should be there.
Yeah, it is, and that's also a fun fact why if you have a really really full hard drive, your computer will be slower because part one that file can't be as expansive, and part two, it has other stuff to do with how your computer uses memory, but it's just kind of interesting because of there's so many things hidden away from you by your OS.
Hmm.
So, although to be honest, this is really a secondary issue to like the whole reason why off the bat when you install a hard drive it's missing space is usually
It's
because Windows.
yeah, because you have the actual OS there on it.
Yeah, like how I told you about that swap file.sys?
Yep.
It's usually like between 1 and 10 gigabytes. It's not that big, right? And 10 is like, and the thing is, Windows will auto size it. Like if you only have like a 250 gigabyte hard drive, it'll make it like 1 gigabyte. But if you have a 2 terabyte hard drive, it may be upwards of like, 10, 12 gigabytes because it's assuming you have spare space on a
Hmm.
2 terabyte hard drive, right?
Yeah, I mean, Who's gonna fill it all the way up?
What kind of sociopath? Windows mutters. Yeah. So that's really the big difference. It's not very complicated. It's more like, I'm speaking French and you're speaking Italian and we're kind of saying the same thing. It's just being interpreted differently, whether you're on Windows or on a different operating system.
So, huh.
Yeah, it's not really a problem many people run into, and if they do, most people don't really care. If you buy a terabyte and you only get 940 gigabytes, I don't know
It's
anyone who's going to return a hard drive because it says it has the wrong space.
Can you imagine just going up to the guy at the Best Buy counter and being
Yeah.
like, "Someone took a bite out of my hard drive."
Walking up, just saying, "Okay, chief, all right, I understand what you're saying here, but it says a terabyte on the box. I plug it in, buddy, this is 930. I paid X amount of dollars per
I
gigabyte."
paid probably less than $50 because hard drive space on actual hard drives is cheap now.
Yeah, it's really nuts. How cheap a lot of hard drives are getting, especially with SSDs. SSDs used to be really pricey. Now, like,
Hmm.
they're still expensive, but they're not nearly as expensive as they were.
Yeah.
And do you want to hear a quick aside of what my favorite kind of storage is?
I'm gonna make a bet right now that you like storing data in frog brains, wetware.
You Yeah, I actually rewrite the DNA sequences of frogs. No, I no, it's tape. Tape is the cheapest memory.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't actually have anything that I can store on tape. Like they don't create tape drives anymore for
yeah.
computers, but there are companies that still have massive backups of data on tape because tape is like something like a tenth or a hundredth of a cent per gigabyte. So you can get just absurd amounts of memory, like amounts of storage for cheap, but also you can't, walk by with a magnetized wallet clip or else it'll mess up some of your data. But,
That and that and it's not exactly as compact, right?
no, no, it's not. It's also not stable and, it's hard. It's really slow to read because if you want to get to something in like a hard drive, like a standard magnetic disk hard drive, it just spins to it, right? So it's relatively
Hmm.
quick. In tape, you have to scroll by because it's like you have one stream of data. You just have to scroll by everything you don't care about until you get to where you know it is, which is kind of funny. But
Hey, I didn't know that about you, Matt.
what, dude? Come on, you
That
could.
you like tape.
Yeah, I've digitized all the family photos on about 7 VHS tapes, and now I just keep them. I'm
Yeah, I
kidding.
was gonna say for a guy who makes fun of my passion for VHS.
I don't know what you want from me, Eric, but it's tape is the way of the future. That's a joke. That is really not true at all. Well, I think that sums it up. It's a pretty simple topic, not too much to it, but I still thought it'd be interesting and kind of help educate you and anyone who wants to listen about the differences between you know part one, the difference between like memory and storage, which is RAM versus like hard disk,
Hmm.
and like why Windows gyps you out of
Yeah, it's not the hard drive manufacturer's fault.
no,
Blame
they're
Windows.
damn you, Windows. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Eric. It's
Yeah,
always nice to chat with you, pal.
yeah, it was a blast.
Yeah. All right. So I'll see you next episode.
I will see you next episode, pal.